One of the key things I want to keep in mind when I play chess is to have an idea of when to fight and when not to fight. So this is a standard opening moves, and I want to keep in mind also of deceiving the enemy, appearing weak when you're strong, and knowing when you're weak and taking advantage of that. So here we have the very standard opening moves so far. That really wasn't to go right there, but that's fine. It's protected. I like to always make sure that where I move my pieces, that they're protected when they're moved. And so I'm looking for weak places. That's protected by one spot. That's protected by one. So those are areas that's protected by one. So those are all areas that I have in the back of my mind I would like to take advantage of. And I didn't go here like the database suggested because I wanted to deny the knight coming to this square to cause me trouble. I just didn't want to have that. So the queen moves there, possibly to add another protector to this pawn. I'm not sure. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it does allow me the possibility of kicking the queen and taking advantage of the square. But I certainly was thinking about that. I moved up the other flank pawn. I didn't want the knight to come here since the queen was on that side anyway. Then the knight comes here, and he's after my unprotected bishop. So that's a completely unprotected bishop. So I could either move my pawn up and protect my bishop and trade pieces and have a corridor open, or I could retreat. I chose to retreat. And I could have attacked the queen at that point. But that would have been another thing that I could have done. But then he could have taken my knight, and I just would have, it seemed to me I would have had fewer choices had I done that. He moves his knight back. I think it's a weakness to move your pieces twice in the opening. It's much better to just move them once. So I'm playing Silas-The-Strong, a bot on chess.com that's rated at 1650. I'm only rated at 892 at this time. So I was pretty thrilled to be able to win this game. So I finally put this pawn up to protect this pawn and open up an avenue for this bishop to take action. Put this pawn down. I move my knight up finally because I've got my eye on this square to see what I can do with it. So what does he do next? He moves there and blocks my bishop, which is an unprotected. It just gives me a free piece. So I do that. That doesn't seem wise to me. So he moves his bishop there, and now I'm fully defeated from taking that spot. And now I should have gone ahead and taken it because he could only take it with his pawn, which would have given me a free piece, possibly. But nevertheless, I move my bishop up here to threaten his knight because I really like to mess up the pawn structure of my opponent when I can. I don't want to just trade pieces. I'm going to trade pieces with something in mind. I want to deceive the enemy, make it maybe look like I'm doing one thing when I'm doing something else. And I want to have an idea of my strengths and weaknesses. I'm not as strong with a bishop as I am with a knight. And so I'd much rather trade my bishops in for knights when I can and save my knights, especially during the endgame. So he moves down to kick my bishop, so that makes up my mind. I just go ahead and take his knight, and then I have this open corridor to play with, possibly. I castle, and then he threatens my knight. He's going to kick it. So I can either take here, or I can retreat. And so I decided to go ahead and retreat, because I honestly really like having my knight here as opposed to something else. When I'm castled, I feel it's a little extra edge of protection. So I move my bishop up. I have an idea of going and playing around with these pawns, doing something with them. I really think he's going to castle on that side. So he comes here to threaten this corridor and then unprotected pawn. So I move the pawn up. So I could have attacked. I could have just defended, or I could have done something, I guess, in between. And I move the pawn up to protect it and attack a little bit and get a little more. It takes these two squares out of the running by my pawn, or at least protected by my pawn. So he moves there and gets ready to castle. I move my pawn up to deny him being able to move down, and also to get these pawns lined up in a defensive stretch, which I think is cool. The database didn't like it, but that's okay. I don't mind too badly. All right, so now he has castled, and I'm eyeing what I can do with this, the citadel that he's created. So I move my queen up so that I can, do something perhaps. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I have something in mind. And so he moves his rook here. I don't know why. There's no way that he's going to attack that pawn. That pawn's protected by a pawn. He's not going to sacrifice his queen for that. I don't know what it is. So, but then I'm worried that maybe he was trying to appear strong where he was weak or something, and deceiving me with some move that I wouldn't pick up on. I wasn't sure what he was going to do. So I go ahead and move my pawn up because I realize that I can probably do pretty good at this little exchange. He doesn't have a way to defend this area so that it could fork my pieces. So then we have 4 pawns in the middle. Look at that. All our 4 pawns are right here in the middle. And we can take and take or whatever. It'll be some kind of an exchange. So I started with an exchange here because I realized I could exchange there and threaten his knight. His knight would have no recourse. So he takes my pawn. I take. And he takes. Okay, at this point I'm ahead 1 point. And so I go right there. I think that's a good place to go because I can threaten this pawn and this bishop. His queen really doesn't have a lot she can do down here. She's kind of blocked by 2 pawns. This rook doesn't. So even though they can see each other, that is powerful. I still felt like I had a pretty decent thing. Plus, this pawn's unprotected, which I, had in mind. So he threatens my queen, so he goes on the attack. So I move here to get out of the way of that, although that was a danger. He could have taken this here and forked it. Of course, I would have taken here, so I guess it wasn't really that much a danger. But I didn't see it at the time. I didn't realize that he could have taken his, if he had a way to protect his bishop and come down there, it would have forked my queen and my rook. Not a good thing at all. So I want to know my strengths and weaknesses, and one of mine is seeing the diagonals. I don't always see that diagonal, so I have to continually be thinking about the diagonals and where they can go all over the board, and that's one of the things that I have to do continually. So he comes down and threatens my knight. Well, I realize that I can go ahead and take his bishop, and that's considered a great move by the database, and that's going to mess up his pawn structure, where his king is not going to be as easily defended as he was. So he takes. So I put my queen there, and that's considered a question mark by the database. The database thought I should have gone over here and taken charge of this corridor here, which I really should have done, but I didn't. And so he comes to threaten my unprotected pawn, but I go and take his pawn. And he can't move with his king because that pawn is trapped by my queen, which I love to do. I'm 1 move away from checkmate unless he does something. So he does. He puts his rook up there to protect. And so I put my piece here. I have in mind if he takes it, I'll take, and then we'll go from there and see what he would do. He didn't. Now he's threatening my rook, which I don't appreciate at all. So I decide to go ahead and take his pawn and threaten his queen. His queen is threatened by a pawn that's protected by my queen. So that's going to kick his queen out of the way, but it still leaves my rook in danger. And I kind of forgot about that in a few pieces. So I forgot about my weakness. This is a terrible weakness that I have right now, and I didn't pay as much attention to it as I should. So he comes down here to double up on that. What would have happened here is he would have taken my rook. There's nothing I could do, because if I took him with my rook, he'd take with his queen, and I would be down a bunch of pieces. So instead, I moved my king out of... Oh, he put me in check there. I didn't realize that. So when he moved there, he put me in check. So really, the best place I could move is right there. I could have moved here if I wanted to, but that would have left me more exposed to... he still has his dark squared bishop and his queen. They could both take action against me. So he takes my rook that I forgot about. I take his rook. He takes with his king. I take here. And then I'm getting ready to get an unexpected bonus. So I'll be on the lookout for unexpected bonuses, because he moves his king there. And then all I have to do is move here. And he'll have to move out of the way. And I'll be able to get that rook absolutely free. So that'll even things up. Right now he's up 1 point. But I'm getting ready to be up a little bit. So now I'm up 4 points. So now we can go around and move. He takes that pawn. Why not? So I put him in check. And the database thought I should have gone ahead and traded for the queen. Instead, I get a a free pawn. So what I have in mind doing is moving my pawn up, which is obviously a very weak piece, but I'm going to protect it all the way up there. And as I protect it, I'd rather trade something important for that pawn as it gets up to the point of being traded. So I put one thing I realized is that if he had his queen here on this row, all he has to do is move this bishop up here, and it would be checkmate for me. There'd be nothing I could do about that. So I really noticed that kind of at this point in the game and began to worry. So I made it a point to go ahead and trade his queen. So I put my rook down there, which is not really helpful because all he had to do is put his queen down to threaten my bishop. I would have had to gone down here and play around with that for a while, but he didn't do that. He put his bishop up there, possibly getting ready to try for checkmate. I moved my pawn up, and then he moves his bishop back down. I don't know what he's doing, why he's moving back and forth. So then I offered to trade queens. Let's get rid of that powerhouse. So we trade queens. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns. He has 2. That's a huge thing. Don't ever think that, that pawns are just something to be thrown away. They're very important. So he puts his king down to take my pawn. I decided to advance this pawn. We'll trade for that bishop, perhaps. We'll see. Puts his bishop up there. That's fine. He takes that. I advance. He advances. I advance. Now, there's really not a lot for me to do. If I'd thought about it a little bit and got my bishop out a little sooner, that I could have done something. But instead, I've got all my pieces on white, and I begin to move and get ready to take his bishop. So he moves his king up there, which is questionable. And so I go ahead, let's trade bishops. So I do. So then the king has nothing he can do except move away. So I get my queen, and then I begin to just take pieces. And then I like to move the king over to one of the sides, if possible, like that. Now he's at a side, and I can contain him. He's contained, and he's not going to get into stalemate. I can't tell you the times that I've thought the opponent was completely weak, and he turned out to be strong enough to do a stalemate on me. So then I move my king down and get right down to where I can put him in checkmate. So that's one of the great ways to do checkmate at the end game. And it's fantastic to keep in mind, what's strong, what's weak. Deceive your enemy. Appear weak when you're strong, strong when you're weak. Know your strengths and your weaknesses. That's one way that Sun Tzu defeated so many enemies at incredible odds over and over again. And that's kind of what we do at chess. We do that. One of the things I also do is I calm myself. During the game, I get all tense and upset. So I like to take just 2 or 3 breaths and focus on my breathing. I don't make it over, like if I've got an opponent on the other side of the table. I just, I take a couple of deep breaths, focus just on my breathing, and that's a way to get calm and centered back on the game. Have a great day. Thank you so much for watching.